Hi, everyone. Mattie, thank you for coming and for doing this presentation. I know you had to tweak it a little bit to fit it into our time constraints, so thank you for that. Mattie Watson, she's also known locally as the Bird Lady, and you're going to find out why. She's been an avid birder since she moved to Florida in 2013. She's a Connecticut native who spent many years in the Midwest. Her interest in birds exploded when she saw the amazing diversity of avian species in Florida's unique environment. This interest has prompted her to develop a bird talk for the members of her home communities and special interest groups, employing her unique perspective and presentation style. And I have seen it once and she's very good. So please welcome to our club, Mattie Watson.
Thank you. Thank you, Carol. It sure would be nice to see you all in person, but I certainly understand the constraints that you all are having here. I did tweak this a little bit, but I just want to be clear that the presentation is more geared toward a casual birder, someone who may not be as familiar. I believe all of you may be much more familiar with some of these birds that I'm going to present. So I'm hoping that I can give you a little bit of some background information or other interesting facts about these birds as we go along.
Mattie, Mattie, forgive me. Can I ask everyone to mute their themselves? I can't seem to do it from this end. At the end, when you need to talk to us, we'll come back on. But I know with me, it'll be doggies. So I'm going to mute myself. Mattie, keep talking.
Okay, thank you. And Carol, I know you and I had talked a bit about questions. So if you can monitor if people have questions, we can take a look at either during the presentation or at the end. I'm at your disposal for this evening. So again, thank you very much. I do want to be honest with you that I am not an ornithologist. I don't mean to present myself that way. I'm not a biologist. I'm not a scientist. The only ist I am is an enthusiast. And the only thing I love more than looking at birds is talking about birds. So that's what we're going to do a little bit tonight. So I mentioned earlier that this is geared more towards casual birders. Now, if you're familiar with the Fujita scale that talks about the intensity of tornadoes, I've developed what I call the Watson scale, which develops the intensity of birders. So from 0 to 2 is the non-birder. You get the little flat expression here is these folks just actually, birds don't even register. A little hard in Florida because birds are like right in your face, but there are those who have other interests or jobs or families or lives, and they just not into birds, and that's fine. The casual birder this is something that hits a lot of people when they have a close bird encounter. And especially in Florida, you can have a lot of close bird encounters. I mean, really close bird encounters. And the birds that you see here, a lot of our snowbirds, our people's snowbirds, won't see in their part of the country because these birds just don't go there very often. So you get this kind of a wide-eyed wow expression. That's pretty much the expression I had the first time I saw a sandhill crane. And I was looking up at it because I was sitting down. That's kind of scary. But it's a pretty exciting thing when you start seeing all these unusual birds. Some of the folks actually then turn into avid birders. Now, the casual birder might pick up a bird that looks like this. It's called the Birds of Florida. Okay, I like this book because it's pretty simple. It's divided up into size and color. You don't have to know anything about what family or genus that these birds are in. It's just size and color. It's a very, very good beginner book. When you get into being an avid birder, you might pick up Sibley's Guide or maybe a Peterson's Field Guide. Okay, very handy books to have in your library and will help you identify the different birds that you're seeing. And then you can get into crossover to serious birder. Interesting information about David Allen Sibley. He is an ornithologist who is the son of an ornithologist. He writes that he goes out birding at least 2 hours every day. I would put him in the category of really serious birder, okay? I don't know that much. I like to go on walks with serious birders. We talked earlier about somebody who can recognize the sounds, who can identify birds by the bird calls. A lot of serious birders can do that. And it's really a lot of fun to go on a bird walk with a serious birder. Now on the slide, you're going to see a few notes. You'll see the name of the bird, the letter L, and a number after that. That indicates the length of the bird from the tip of the beak to the end of the tail. It doesn't include legs because legs could really skew this. This is how most birds are identified by size. And it's important because it's a key aid in identification of the bird that you're looking at. Most people have common birds that they know immediately what it is. For most of us, it's a robin and a great blue heron. These are birds that are everywhere. You can, in your mind, visualize, here's a robin, here's a great blue heron. You can visualize the size difference between them. So if you're dealing with a bird that you don't know, and it's on the smaller end of the scale, how much bigger than a robin, how much smaller than a robin? Same thing with a great blue heron. Is it bigger than a great blue heron, or is it smaller? How much smaller than a great blue heron? Size is a key indicator of what the bird species is. The photos that you're going to see, and I'm very aware of who you all are and your talent with taking photographs, so I'm trying not to be intimidated. But the photos you're going to see will show key characteristics of adult males. Now, some species of birds, the male and females look identical. Others, there's subtle differences. And then still others, the male and the females look like two completely different species. I don't have many of those last ones. There are some in here that have subtle differences between male and female, and we'll point those out. So things to keep in mind if you're in the field and you're looking to identify birds. And yes, the bird color is important, but note also all of the colors of the bird, because many of them have varying colors. Their chests are a different color than their back, their heads are a different color. There might be really identifying marks like red-winged blackbirds where there's this red stripe on the side, which, you know, automatically identifies it that way. Look at the length of the bill. How long is it? What shape is it? Is it a stocky, heavy bill? Does it down curve? Is it straight? Some of them curve up. What color is the bill? What color are the legs? All of these things are very important when you get into trying to figure out what is this unknown bird. We were talking about a couple of folks saw a scissor-tail, swallowtail kite, and it's really quite unique with it's white with some black on the ends of the wings and the really distinct swallowtail formation. All of that's very, very important. And chances are you guys saw it flying, right? The swallowtail kite, which is very distinctive in the flying. All the photos you're going to see are taken by me unless otherwise noted. And again, I'm trying really hard not to be intimidated by who I'm talking to. Okay, so let's get started into some of the iconic birds in our community. And we live in Heritage Harbor, which is out near where the new Costco is located, 7564 in that location. And the people in our community go absolutely crazy for the white pelicans. This is the second largest bird in North America. Note the size of this bird. This is 5 feet 2 inches. I'm 5'1". Okay, so this bird is longer than me. The wingspan is 9 feet. That's a big bird. Weighs 16 pounds. That's an amazing size for a bird. And the fact that they can fly so gracefully is unbelievable. Now, the interesting thing about this bird is when they feed in a very cooperative manner. I've seen as few as 5, but also as many as 50 or 60 in a pond, and they start on one end, the shallow end. And you see in the photo, this background here, these long weeds and reeds along the edge of the pond, a lot of fish hide in there. And so what the birds do is they herd the fish down into that direction. And then when all the fish are down in that area, they feed, they start dipping and pulling up the fish. It's really an amazing thing to watch. And if you look around the edge of the pond, there's also these other wading birds that are waiting for the pelicans to drive the fish right to them. It is an absolute feeding frenzy. It is nuts. We see these big groups like that starting around February. Usually these guys are gone by March. I don't know what's happened this year, but in a couple of ponds around Heritage Harbor, we have seen some white pelicans as recently as just a couple of weeks ago, which to me seems like really late. Now, I don't know if maybe one or two of them were having health problems and a couple of others stayed behind, like geese will do. One gets injured, you know, they'll drop out, and a couple of others will come out in the formation, and they'll stay together until the bird either recovers or dies, and then they'll continue on their way. So I don't know why they were still here, but it was pretty interesting to see, and they're unmistakable when you see them in the water. Now here in Florida, they migrate down from North and South Dakota, Montana area, and way up into Canada. So these guys are migrating a long way. So they have to really feed and build up a lot of fat stores, because they don't feed a lot along the way. They sometimes will fly right through. So they got to be ready to go the long haul. So that's the white pelican. Very, very interesting bird, and always create a great deal of excitement when the neighbors see these. And this is what it looks like sitting in the water. Now you notice in flight, it's got these black feathers. These are their flight feathers. Black feathers are typically stronger and more robust than just all white feathers. So it's not uncommon to see light colored birds with these darker outer flight feathers. You see that a lot in gulls and terns and some other white birds. But when they're sitting in the water, you'd never know that there was white under there. And when they get into breeding season, there's this little plate that grows out of their beak around here. I don't have any idea what that is, other than maybe, you know, I'm available. Now, in contrast, the brown pelican is quite a bit smaller, both in length, and it's about half the weight of a white pelican. This is a breeding brown pelican. I don't know about you, but they always look so dejected to me, you know, with their beak hanging down and their head hanging down. I got a picture of one sitting on a sign that says, "No fishing per city ordinance, blah, blah, blah." And he's got his head down. And I just titled it, "Darn." Because that's what it looks like. He's just so disappointed. No fishing, darn. He's about half the weight of a white pelican. Now, they don't feed the same way as a white pelican. If you've been along the beach, you see them flying over the water. And when they see something in the water, they form themselves into an arrow and plunge into the water like so fast. It's unbelievable. It's got to hurt. It just has got to hurt. And then when they get the fish, they come up, they have to drain the water out of their pouch. Sometimes when they're doing that, the gulls will come and try to take the fish right out of their mouth. I've never seen that happen, but I've heard it from other people that gulls will do that. But then that's what gulls tend to do, is they like to steal food. So I guess I'm not completely surprised. Another very unusual bird for our northern visitors is the anhinga. Now, it's striking with this black and white marking. The other thing that people see, and the question I always get is, what's that bird that sits on the bank with his wings outstretched? They don't have to say anything more than that. 99 times out of 100, it's the anhinga. When this bird swims in the water, this is one of the few birds that has no waterproofing whatsoever. If it did, it would inhibit its ability to hunt because they use this big, long, sharp beak here to spear fish front in the side. So if the fish is swimming along, the beak will come in and he'll spear it in the side. They'll often do that with their beak open a little bit so that when it goes through the side of the fish, they can actually clamp down on it and hold it and bring it back. When it swims out of the water, all you see is the head. And for that reason, sometimes people refer to it as a snake bird. Bless you. Bless you. I don't know if you all have heard that before, is snake bird. But this lack of the waterproofing also means that the feathers absorb all the water. Now imagine you're climbing out of your swimming pool wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. That's what it's going to feel like for you. So they sit on the bank to drain the water. Now the other one that we just looked at was a male. The female has this brown hood. It's very, very distinct. Notice the webbed feet. That's what helps them swim. And the sharp beak, that's what they're stabbing the fish with. And I'll see them kind of independently around. They don't tend to group in large numbers, but they always seem to be hanging around with cormorants. Now the cormorants are also a year-round bird in Florida along the Gulf Coast. They go up into the Midwest and like into Colorado, Wyoming. They'll go up into that area as well. So because I say a bird is year-round here, it doesn't mean that every individual bird that you see here is here all year round. It just means that, you know, some of them will migrate away and then others will stay here year-round. The difference between the cormorant and the anhinga is the cormorants have a little bit more of the preen oil in their feathers, which means they're a little bit more waterproof. So when they're swimming in the water, they sit up a little bit higher, not as high as a duck, but you'll get maybe the top third of their back sticking up out of the water. Their beak is hooked, more like a hawk or like an eagle. When they fish, they snag the fish, they grab onto it. They have webbed feet as well, but their fishing style is a little bit different. They don't have to be as fast as an anhinga to spear the fish. They can just grab it as they're swimming by. The orange under their beak is a real identifier for you because they tend to be all dark, nothing color-wise distinctive other than under these. And that's just skin there. That's not feathers. That's just bare skin under their beaks. They will sometimes sit with their wings outstretched as well. And this, they're sitting on a tube in the water. There was, for a while, and I don't understand what was happening here, but it sure looked funny every time I saw it. I would see a group of cormorants sitting together like this, and on the end of the tube, there'd be a brown pelican. And almost every time I went by, I don't know if this brown pelican imprinted with a cormorant. I mean, they don't have access to mirrors, so maybe he didn't realize, hey, I'm not one of these guys, but he hung out with them. And he was there for like an entire summer. There was this brown pelican hanging out with this group of cormorants. And the cormorants were like, just look at them like, oh, okay. They were very tolerant of sitting there. One day I saw the brown pelican sitting on the bank with the cormorants, and a couple of them had their wings out. He had his wings out. Dude, you don't have to do that. But I guess he was really trying to fit in with the cormorants. It was really funny, but I haven't seen that lately. Okay, so we're going to talk about some of the iconic wading birds here in Florida. It includes this list of birds that you see here. Herons and egrets are actually very close relatives. You wouldn't know that because they're just well, I guess they look pretty similar, but their coloring is really quite different. But the coots and gallinals, rails, bitterns, all of these fall into the category of wading birds. So by definition, long, thin legs, their toes are very flexible so that they can grab onto the surface that they're standing on for stability. Their bills are adapted to their diet. So if you think about a spoonbill versus a wood stork versus any of the herons and egrets, what they're eating and how they're eating makes a difference. They have these, what I call these Audrey Hepburn necks that just like go on for a mile. And what they need is that flexibility that aids in their hunting. But man, if you've ever seen one waiting to catch something, I have seen great egrets stand so still, you'd swear it was a statue. And I know that for us photographers, you want to get that shot, right? When they're grabbing their prey, good luck, because they are so fast and they don't give any indication that they're going in for the kill. They can wait for a very, very long time. By definition, wading birds actually need something to wade in. So the habitats that we have here in Florida in such an abundance, like ponds, streams, bogs, mangroves, estuaries, ideal habitat for these birds. Unfortunately, what's happening to this habitat? A lot of it's going away. And we have to be very careful that we manage the land that we have. I know people want to come here, but I think at some point we have to say we can only take over so much. Otherwise, we're going to lose a lot of these birds, and that would be a tragedy. Wading birds eat a variety of food, from fish, aquatic insects, plants, crabs, frogs, geckos. You know, a lot of them, they're not particularly fussy, but it all has to do with the kind of environment that they're in. Some of them nest in large communal groups called rookeries. We talked a little bit ago about the Venice rookery, and I haven't been there in quite a long time. Last time I went, they had taken out all of the Brazilian pepper, which a lot of then the natural landscape was pretty sparse. Now it's been a few years, so if I go back, I'm hoping that it's grown up a little bit better. But I don't know. They do have bat houses there now, so if you're not creeped out by bats, you can go and take a look at them in at night coming out. That might be fun. I don't know if y'all are aware of the real ugliness of plume hunting. Have any of you heard of that before? What happened to the birds? At one time, an ounce of feathers, and this is an ounce of feathers. Okay, there's a lot of feathers. In fact, if we were all together, I could very dramatically dump these out onto a table, and you could see just how many feathers are in an ounce. It was an ounce of bird feathers was twice the value of an ounce of gold. $34. And we're talking back in late 1800s. And my necklace here, if you were to see that, the necklace with the chain would be about an ounce of gold. So it takes a lot of feathers to make an ounce. Unfortunately, the feathers were so easy to get that these guys would go out and hundreds of thousands of millions of birds were taken out of Florida for their plumes, for hats and fans. And what the plume hunters didn't do to them, pesticides have included. So, whoops. So this is tough, that what the birds are going through. The bird I mentioned earlier, the great blue heron, this bird is common just about everywhere in the country. very common along golf courses. This particular photo was taken at the Venice Rookery. He was getting ready to grab some nesting material. But you can see here the plumes, that this is what these plume hunters were going after. The colors and these nice feathery feathers, these long plumy feathers. And in this picture, you can see it even better. Interesting, these feathers here, these birds have like a toe that they can scratch these feathers and it creates like a down and it becomes a washcloth. And they can actually use it to groom themselves to remove either fish slime or bog oil or anything that's kind of sticking to their feathers. And this is very important for their survival. I mean, people think of it as this is all mating stuff, but it actually serves a very useful purpose for keeping the bird clean. The other thing that's interesting in this picture is you don't usually see this great blue heron with something so small. I usually see them with some big honking fish they're trying to choke down. I don't know how they do it. Now, I did go online and find out that sometimes they overestimate the ability of what they can swallow, and they do choke to death. So not too cool to know, but yeah, they can overdo it, because I've seen some with fish like that. That's just, there's no way that thing's going down your throat. Now notice the size of the tricolored heron by comparison. It's about half the size. Again, beautiful blue coloring. Notice the white neck and white belly. You got yellow legs, yellow bill on the lower mandible, a darker bill on the upper mandible. And there's a little bit of orange right here on the throat, hence the tricolored name. Now, the thing with tricolored herons is these are not very good parents. When they come back to the nest with food, the kids bite at them, they snap at them. They're just like, until the parents bow. Okay, I'm thinking, if I'm the parent, you want to eat, you don't snap. When you stop snapping, you get food. That's the end of that discussion. But no, they let them get away with it. So I think that's kind of weird. This is a year-round bird here, and you'll see it along the Gulf Coast and a little bit up at the Atlantic coast, but not so much inland. So another bird that our casual birders come down, and they're pretty common around here. Maybe not as obvious as the white birds, but if anybody plays golf or walks by ponds, it's not unusual to see these birds hanging around. Also, by comparison to the great blue heron is the little blue heron. And this one is like, it's really all blue, all blue. There's no other color on this bird anywhere. The color of the legs is kind of a grayish yellow. And the distinctive part here, along with the color, is this partially gray big beak with a black tip, very pronounced black tip. That is a key identifying characteristic of the little blue heron. This bird didn't suffer as much in the plume hunting days because it doesn't develop those showy, plumy feathers that were so popular. So it escaped a lot of that, but pesticides and loss of habitat have been a big challenge for the little blue heron. Now going on to the egret. Notice the egrets here. I talked about how important the black feathers were on the wings, but egrets don't seem to have them. Birds shed feathers regularly and frequently. I mean, you got to consider it. This is their clothing. This is how they fly. This is what their survival is based on. So caring for their feathers and having good, healthy feathers is a very important aspect for them. And they really spend a lot of time on keeping their feathers very well groomed. This is a common year-round bird in Florida and along the coast. It is a summer bird in other central US states, almost into Canada. Notice that this bird has black legs and a yellow bill. seen a little bit more clearly here. And you can see also the plumy feathers on the back and on the chest. Typically, they fly egrets and herons with their necks kind of scrunched in, makes them a little bit more aerodynamic. But they will also fly neck out, as he's doing a little bit with carrying the nesting materials. You see the size of the great egret, the yellow bill, black legs. Notice the snowy egret has a black bill and yellow feet, sometimes called the golden slippers. This bird, half the size as I mentioned, oh man, this guy almost lost it completely with the plume hunters, because you can see just how much in the way of feathers that they have here. And then compared to that, this is the other egret that we have in Florida. It's not a great picture, I know that, but you can get a feel for why it's called the cattle egret. It hangs around in the fields behind various livestock. It's attracted to the insects that the cow byproduct attracts. And you can see here, it's got a yellow bill, yellow legs, but this is now breeding season. They got this kind of a light rusty color on the back of their head, their back, and also a little bit on the chest. Still considered a wading bird, but I don't see it around ponds as much. These I see in the fields around Bradenton area. Now, I was fortunate to get this shot at the beach where you can see the difference between the great egret and the snowy egret. Granted, the snowy's got his neck curled down a little bit, but you can get a real good feel for just how different sizes these birds are. And note that the great egret's standing behind the snowy egret. So it's quite a distinct difference. When I first came to Florida and I kept seeing big white birds, it took me a while to get my bearings on just how big a great egret was versus the size of a snowy egret. And I had a lady come to me one day and said, you know, what are these big white birds I see everywhere? Well, after what we've just seen, I can think of 5 birds right off the top of my head that meet the categories of big, white, see everywhere, right? I mean, you can see these birds driving to the grocery store, going out to get your mail. I mean, you don't have to be a really serious bird watcher to see these birds. So I started asking her questions, and she just said, I don't know, I see them from my car. So I said, okay, I need more information about the bird, not about where you see them from, but I gave her the names of the birds and said, good luck. So now that we've talked about all of that, can you identify which bird this one is? Because it can be a little tricky. When I took this picture, quite frankly, I assumed by the size that it was, because you don't have a feel for that not being right next to it. But I assumed it was a snowy egret because he's all white. But when I got the picture home and I started looking at it, things are wrong because the legs don't match a snowy egret's. And this is a little blue heron's bill. And that's what this bird is a little blue heron. Little blue herons are born pure white. And this is part of the challenge that at least beginning birders have, is identifying juveniles from adults. And that's what Sibley does a good job in his bird book, identifying this is what a juvenile looks like. This is what a female looks like. This is what a male looks like. And gulls are even more maddening because they look different from the first year and the second year and the third year. It can be very, very challenging. So this bird gradually over the course of a year loses the white feathers and becomes all blue in the rich dark blue. Now, people have asked, well, why are they born white? I mean, that pretty much makes them stand out even more than ever. The darker blue color is better camouflage. Well, here's the thing. Little blue herons are more closely related to egrets than they are to herons. And so this bird, when it's all white, can mingle in with the snowy egrets. And the snowy egrets are tolerant of it. So the bird gets the benefit of a group that safety in numbers and is more successful at hunting because they are hunting together as a group. Interestingly, the snowy egrets are not tolerant of the adult that's all blue. They don't want them hanging around, but they are very tolerant of the juvenile until he starts to turn to blue and hanging out with them. I have to say that this was a bird that I wanted to see so bad from the first time I saw this bird book, which I got at Celery Fields. No, not at Celery Fields, at the Corkscrew Sanctuary. I had never seen a bird like this before. And the first time I saw one live and in person, I about freaked out. Notice the bill, okay, first of all, how they fish is they sweep their bill back and forth open in the water. And when they come across the prey, they slam it shut. I mean, the reflexes are unbelievably fast. The other thing that's amazing about them is this color on the side. They eat a lot of shrimp. Shrimp eat a lot of algae. Algae creates yellow and a red carotenoids, and that's what builds up in the feathers of these birds. So you get a very juvenile spoonbill, and they're just a very pale shade of pink with none of this intense marking on the side. As the bird gets older, this marking gets more and more intense. And very similar to what happens to flamingos. And that's something else that shocked me when I came down here, because I'm looking at this bird and it's clearly very unique, but it is also clearly not a flamingo. And yet so many people see this bird and, okay, pink bird plus Florida equals flamingo, right? Well, not necessarily. So it's also astonishing to me how people who have absolutely no knowledge of such things can state with absolute certainty that this is a flamingo. And you have to show them the book to say, you know, okay, no, this is what a flamingo looks like. This is a roseate spoonbill. It does have a lot of things in common with flamingos. For example, it will sleep standing on one leg like flamingos do, and they will tuck their bill under their wing like flamingos will, and sweeping their head back and forth like flamingos do, but most definitely not a flamingo. If you want to know what a flamingo looks like, just drive around in your community. You'll see some lawn ornament somewhere that will show you what a flamingo looks like, because they seem to be everywhere. And that's the only way you'll see a flamingo in Florida anymore, because they're just about gone naturally. Saw millions of them in Africa, but in the US, they're pretty much done. Okay, the next bird is the white ibis. The interesting thing about this particular photo is, honestly, the first few times I saw white ibises, I thought their bills were brown, primarily because the bill spends so much time in the mud. And if you watch these guys in a field, we have some ball fields over here at Heritage Harbor, and there'll be a whole crowd of them together, and they're marching across the field like some landscaper hired them to aerate the lawn. They're all digging down for the insects into the grass. And so they're marching across the ground. This one happened to have just come out of the water, and he was digging around in some water, and it cleaned his bill off. So this is what the color actually is. Notice the pink legs, the pink bill, and that down curve. That's a really distinctive characteristic of this particular bird. It's year-round in Florida and along most of the Gulf Coast and up the Atlantic coast to Maryland. It's interesting that the babies of these birds hatch with a perfectly straight bill. And then over the first few weeks, it starts to downturn. Now, very closely related to that, but a completely different species, is the glossy ibis. Notice it's a brown bill here, and the color of the legs is kind of a yellowish green as opposed to the rosy pink of the white ibis. The glossy ibis in the sunshine, you'll get to see this beautiful iridescence on the side. If you catch them in the shade, or if the sun is not out that day, they just look like a brown bird. But they are two completely different species. So which one is this, if you take a look at it? Well, it is not the love child of a white ibis and a glossy ibis. This is a juvenile white ibis. Now, before we had the blue heron that was born white and then turned blue. This is a white ibis that is born brown with this kind of gray on the head and turns white over a period of time, usually the first year. And they begin to look very mottled as they get to the last 6 months, and these brown feathers drop off. So again, this is what can make the identification of birds so difficult. I have seen large flocks of white ibises, as I said, work in the field. These juveniles will be mixed in with them, and sometimes along the edges, there'll be the glossy ibises. And then there's this guy, a face only a mother could love. The wood stork is what is considered a key indicator species for the Everglades. The Everglades is a critical habitat for wood storks for breeding. Now, I have seen them carrying nesting materials around here in Bradenton. And so I know that they're nesting nearby, which is a good sign, because the Everglades is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and UNESCO has deemed that it is critically endangered. I mean, we're killing the Everglades. And as such, excuse me, the birds are starting to go away from the Everglades, and we're losing a lot of that habitat. The wood stork's range, however, is moving gradually north as we're getting into more the global warming. So, you know, they might be able to find other places to nest. They need about 40 miles of range to be able to successfully nest. By contrast, when they fly with their neck fully extended, and see how much they have on the black on the feathers, because that's much stronger for them in flight. The sandhill crane, as I mentioned to you earlier, most amazing bird I had ever seen. And I was talking to a friend of my husband's one day and telling him how I really was so surprised by the sandhill cranes, and I thought they were great. And he looked at me and he said, "Really? In Texas, we shoot them." "You shoot them? Why?" I said, "Well, because they're really destructive to crops. They eat a lot of plants, and they eat insects in the ground, and they dig up the plants when they do that." So there are like 10 or 12 states that actually it's legal to hunt sandhill cranes. Not in Florida, but here in the US, there are several states that will be legal to hunt them. In fact, I went looking for information on which states you could hunt sandhill cranes in. And you know how when you like Google a topic, a number of different sites will bubble up. One of the sites was sandhill crane recipes. Okay, what I learned from reading that site is you can try it, but don't bother, because this bird is like way too gamey. Another interesting fact about the sandhill cranes is this brilliant red patch on their head isn't feathers, it's skin. I always thought it was feathers, but it's not, it's skin. Okay, so I'm gonna add in another story here on the yellow-crowned night heron. This is not typically part of the original presentation, but it's an interesting photography story. this was a bird that I knew what it looked like, and I wanted to see it when I came to Florida. And I could not get a good view of it. I had a lot of pictures of legs, butts, and back of heads, but I could not get a really good picture of a yellow-crowned night heron. There is a park, Ponce de Leon Park, down in Punta Gorda. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but it's the Peace River Wildlife Refuge is there. They do a lot of great work. You can, bring injured birds there and they rehabilitate them and will release them, or if they can't release them, keep them there at the refuge. So one of the first things I like to do when I got to that park is they have a beautiful, about a quarter-mile boardwalk that walks through the mangroves. And so I always start my walk right there. Well, this one day I got there and I'm walking up to the beginning of the boardwalk, which walks over a creek and then goes through the mangrove. And I see this bird. And he's just standing there on the railing. This is the shot, right? This is the shot everybody wants. So I very carefully raised my camera and I took a couple thousand pictures. They all look exactly the same, but you get going and you just keep taking them and taking them and taking them. And he just stood there and looked at me like for a few minutes. So then I thought, oh, okay, well, this was great. Thank you very much. I'm going to move now. So start moving very slowly because I don't want to startle him, but I know that when I move, he's going to fly away. Well, he didn't fly away. He started walking down the road. So I take a few steps and he kept his distance. He stayed the same distance away. But every time I stopped, he stopped. And when I walked, he walked. It was the most amazing thing. And then I remembered that right after the bridge, there's an interpretive sign for the yellow-crowned night heron. So we continue our walk down and I got to a few feet away from the sign. And I stopped saying to him, stop, 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 stop. And he did. And that's the photo. Now, this is a really bad photo. I understand that. He's looking in the wrong direction. The sign is cattywampus. You can argue that it's a little out of focus, but this is my favorite photo because I call it the living exhibit, the yellow-crowned night heron standing in front of the yellow-crowned night heron interpretive sign. Love it. Okay, we'll go quickly through gulls and terns. Gulls and terns are really difficult because gulls in particular take a long time to get to their adult plumage. And as they're transitioning, they go through, not just their juvenile to adult plumage, but they've got winter plumage and breeding plumage and all kinds of other plumages. But there's only really 3 gulls that are common in Florida, the ring-billed, laughing, and herring gulls. And only the laughing gull breeds here. The ring-billed and the herring gulls are seasonal birds for Florida. These birds are mainly scavengers. They'll pretty much eat anything. If you ever brought snacks to the beach, you know that to be true, right? Because they'll come take them right out of your hand and have no bones about it. Interesting, though, when they're feeding their young, they feed them very healthy fish diets. But for themselves, they'll eat anything. Some of these birds can live more than 20 years, and they tend to be little food thieves. The challenges, as I mentioned, with identifying them is from season to season. There's the breeding, there's the non-breeding, and it can take up to 4 years for some of these gulls to reach their full breeding plumage. The first one is the ring-billed gull. You can see why it's named ring-billed gull with this very distinctive ring around the bill. It's about 17.5 inches. This is a full adult breeding plumage. This guy is as good as it gets. And the laughing gull, about the same size. This call has that laughing cadence. I usually hear it right in my backswing as I'm going to take a shot. or even more insulting, after I take the shot, it just laughs like crazy. It's rarely found inland, and it's about the same size as the ring-billed gull. The herring gull, by contrast, look how much bigger it is. If you're at the beach and you see a bunch of gulls and you're hanging around with they're hanging around with each other, this looks like the Shaquille O'Neal of the group. Okay, all the others are kind of small. This guy really stands out. What you don't see well in this photograph is a very distinctive red dot that's on the lower mandible out to the front here. Okay, if you look at the laughing gull here, what you don't see is this bill is actually pretty red. The sun was not shining this day, so the bill looks just dark. But as these birds get older, the bill colors become more distinct. And the ring-billed gull, when they're young, when they're really young, the whole bill is black, and then it's just the end of the bill is black. And then when they get to be adults, they've got that ring around it. Now, if you look in this photograph, what we have here in the background is a juvenile ring-billed gull with, see the tip of the bill is red. Now, if you want to really work on your gull and tern identification skills, I would say go to the dump, the Lena Road dump in Bradenton. Make sure you check in at the house when you get there. Let them know that you're there, and drive up to the top of the mound. And there are thousands of gulls and terns there every day. In fact, the Publix that I shop at is on State Route 64. It's called the Riverside. And I see gulls streaming from the beach, flying to the dump in the morning. And then in the afternoon, they're streaming from the dump, flying back to the beach at night. So if you want to see a lot of gulls in a compact area, go there and you'll see them in all their stages of development. There's 15 in North America, but only 3 are common in Florida during the winter. They're relatively free from predators and parasites. However, that doesn't make them immune from the loss of habitat. All birds are struggling from the loss of habitat. Because they're free from predators and parasites, they can live pretty significantly longer. The thing to look for if you're looking at these birds at the shore, is it a gull or is it a tern? The gulls' beaks or bills are hooked on the end. Terns are straight. When they're flying, a gull's wings are out straighter, whereas a tern's tend to go back at an angle. So there are some, just by overall species, you can tell the difference between a gull and a tern. The royal tern, this is his winter plumage, because the breeding plumage has the black that comes all the way to the front of his face. It is a year-round bird, but because I was putting it in for the casual birders who are here just for the winter months, I showed it in its winter plumage. Notice the very heavy beak and how brilliant red it is. The forester's tern will also but in their non-breeding plumage will have more of a white forehead. So this one is in a breeding plumage. It also has a very heavy red beak, but the black tip is what gives that one away. So you can see the difference between that beak, all red, no black tip. This one is a heavier one with the black tip. And then the sandwich tern, by contrast to the other two, looks really quite delicate. And you can see what I mean about the wings being angled back here. Sandwich terns also get the black forehead for breeding season. If you look very close at the very end of the bill, you'll see the tip is yellow. Now, birders have funny ways of remembering things. So they say, you'll remember this is a sandwich tern because it looks like it dipped its beak in mustard. which is what you put on a sandwich. Okay, whatever it takes. Some things, where to find birds, obviously state and national parks, where you probably all go anyway, because they're wonderful places to take photographs. The Great Florida Birding Trail, just Google Great Florida Birding Trail. There's, you can get, not necessarily maps, but park identifications, trail identifications, and what birds you'll find in each of these locations and at what time of year. The state of Florida is broken up into 4 different sections. So you, wherever section you want to be interested in, you can get a list of all the birding sites that they have. Celery Fields and Venice Rookery are in there, as is the Corkscrew Sanctuary and a bunch of other places. It's just a really wonderful resource if you want to go specifically looking for birds. And don't forget your own backyard. I mean, I've gone out to get the mail and seen a limpkin or a little heron standing on my neighbor's cars. I mean, just, it's unbelievable. One lady came home one night and there was an owl sitting on her mailbox. I mean, it's just so easy here in Florida. Now, I have nothing against going, you know, a good woods creep, but it's just too easy here. A couple of the birds that the books I've talked about already are the Birds of Florida Field Guide and the Sibley. I just like Sibley's. I like it a little bit better than Peterson, but this is something that's a personal preference. On the internet, you can Google anything on the internet. The All About Birds website is operated by the Cornell School of Ornithology, and I get all kinds of information. I mean, they have range maps. You can listen to the birds, the calls, just anything you want to know, you can get information there. And you can also reach out and ask questions, and someone will reach out back to you again. And then the next place is the Sarasota Audubon. Sarasota Audubon operates Celery Fields. They have a wonderful nature facility there that's open Monday through Friday. I think it's 9 a.m. to noon. During season, January through April, they have experts at the 2 different boardwalks that they have out there, 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning. They'll help you identify things. They usually have a scope. They've got extra binoculars, a great way to interact with a lot of different birders and get some really fabulous photographs. So I think I held it within my time. So thank you all very much for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now, or you can email me at mattie718@hotmail.com. My phone number is there too, if you want to make a note of that. And I take this show on the road. So if you think you have a club or a community or an event that might be interested in some of this information, let's talk, and I can customize this to whatever your needs are. So thank you. I hope it was useful for you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mattie.